This is a quick tutorial and overview of the NLA Editor. So this tutorial assumes that you've got your animation clips all together in a list like this with the shield ticked on each one so that they don't get deleted when you restart Blender. Right, a quick look at how this works. You'll have action tracks in the NLA Editor, and those action tracks will have action strips on them, which can be put in order, blended in between, and looped, slowed down, sped up, etc., etc. Firstly, to open the NLA Editor, you'll bring your cursor over here, look for the crosshair, and just take it slightly to the edge and pull a new panel open like that. To close the NLA Editor, or to close another panel in general, put your crosshair in a similar place but perhaps a little bit closer to the middle and just drag over like that. If you're ever in this position accidentally, you can press escape to stop it from happening. You can also close the panel by going to View, Area, and Close Area like that. The NLA Editor can be found up here in the top left corner. Drop Editor Type, look for the second column called Animation, and in Animation, 5 down you've got Non-Linear Animation, which is NLA. When you open that up, you'll have a blank N menu, which you can turn on and off with the N key. The reason it's blank is because there's no animation strip in here to put anything in the N menu yet, but that will become very useful once you do have a strip. The first thing you want to do is create an action strip. Try that again. The first thing you want to do is create an action track to put an action strip on. Now a track won't appear unless you have this selected, because Blender is quite context sensitive. So make sure you've clicked on no action first so that it's glowing orange. Then you can click on add track and it will add a new track. Double click on the name, and in this case I'll call it walk_cycle. And with that track selected, so again make sure it's not accidentally unselected, because if it is, this will happen. With that track selected, go to add and add action strip. Then you'll see the list, which is available down here in the action editor. So I'm going to add walk cycle, add action strip, walk cycle. And now walk cycle is here in the NLA editor. It lasts 25 frames. If I come down here to the timeline, I can press play and I'll see that playback. Just in case anyone's having trouble finding their way to the action editor, if you're on your timeline like this and you can see your auto keying button, your play and all the rest of it, you just need to come over here to this corner, editor type, just like with NLA. In animation, rather than going to NLA editor, you want to go to the dope sheet. Click on dope sheet and you're likely going to see this, but just drop this menu here and select action editor and then you'll be in the right place. When a clip is in the action editor, you can click on it and drag it around like this, like you would in any editing software. But most importantly, the N menu is now active. So if I deselect the clip, you'll see it'll go back to being a blank column. When I select the clip, there are a bunch of options. The ones that concern you most will be repeat, which is down here. I'll just drag that out a little bit. If you click and drag on the number 1, you can see that clip is extending. And every time you see a loop, try again, every time you see a line, that's the beginning of a loop. So you can see it there. You don't have to drag it, you can also type in the number, or you can click on the arrows on the left and right of it to just move along slightly like that. I think you can also hold shift and drag, yep, to just very gently add and take away frames. I'll take mine up to 50, and I think I'll just drag it, take a guess, hold shift just to make it refined, and put it there. Okay, so I've got walk cycle there, excellent, that ends there. Now I'll bring in jump and put that over the top, so stretch this out. And the first thing I'm going to do is create another track. So I'll go to add tracks. Notice I've got walk cycle selected already. Add tracks, and I've got a new track now. I'll double click on it, and I'll call this one jump. With jump selected, I'm going to press Shift A for add, and I'm going to add jump. Now jump is in over the top. So we can watch this back, and he jumps. Jump is currently overriding the track below it, and that's because the extrapolation mode is on hold. You need to turn that to nothing, and it will no longer override the track beneath it until jump comes on screen. Now, as you can see, this hand is snapping back to default. That's because I forgot to key it on the walk cycle track. So here's a good example of how to edit a clip that you already have in the action editor. Click on the clip, press Tab, and that will make the clip editable. You'll see it'll reappear down here in your timeline. I'll just turn that off again. You see the timeline's empty, there's no keyframes there, and nothing's been selected. Click on the clip and press Tab, and all of the keyframes appear. So I need to take this hand, go into pose mode. I'm just going to put it down. Whoops. I'm actually going to click on this hand, and because butterfly is switched on, when I press R, it'll snap all of the different attributes from the other hand over to the screen left or character right. I do need to key them though, so if I click on them, press I can just put the location, rotation, scale keyframes on. Now that they are there, that means the walk cycle should hold its position. I'll just double check, make sure everything's been done properly. So there isn't currently any keyframes on this. I would know there were because they'd be gold. So I need to just figure out why that is. Oh, sorry, that is not selected anymore. There we go. So that's a good example of where this can get confusing and you can just suddenly be a bit baffled. But it's just a case of trying to work through, and you'll eventually spot that something silly like that's happened. Right, so looking at this again, it is gold, so it is keyframed. However, the IK parent is on number 1, and it's not keyframed the way I want it. So I'm going to put it on number 3. And if you remember in the list, number 3 is the chest. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3. So number 3 is actually the hips. Number 4 must be the chest. Yes, there we go. So I'll press I on that, and I'll just check this one. This one's currently on 1, so I'm going to put that on 4 as well, and press I. And now when his hips move, that sticks, but most importantly when his chest moves, those arms stick. That's good, that's all been keyed, and because it's been keyed, walk cycle will now hold on to it when it's in the NLA editor. Right, let's have a look at jump, and you can also see here that jump has a problem on this arm, and it's probably a very similar problem where it doesn't have the keyframes on. So I'm going to click on jump, open it up and just see what's here. So there aren't any keyframes. Here's a good example actually of how to edit a clip if it's not back at 0. So as you can see, the keyframes for jump are over here at 30 to 50. But that's not where I animated jump. I animated jump over here at 0. Now, Blender have enabled you to click on this pin, and that means that when a clip becomes active, it will snap over there so that it's at 0 again. And then when you're finished, you can press tab and it will jump back to where it's supposed to be. So you turn it on, it's over here at 0, and there are the keyframes on the timeline. Just makes life a little bit easier. You do have the pin here that you can turn back on again if you want your clips, if you want your keyframes to stay where the jump is, in sync with the position that it's on the NLA editor. I like mine to be at 0, so I'm going to unpin that. Right, so let's have a look at this. This hand here is all keyed and happy. This hand here is also keyed and fine. Okay, so the fix here was to make sure that the hand had keyframes on it to lock it in place, and it was difficult to get the NLA editor to respond to that, so it was a classic case of get rid of it and bring it back again. So let's talk about blending clips. When you have one clip laying over the top of the other, you can do something called blending, which you'll find over here in the N menu. Now you must make sure you've got the clip selected so that its attributes appear here in the N menu, which is turned on and off with the N key. Blend in will create a white line which goes across one clip to the other, and that just represents the crossfade that's happening. An easier way of doing this though, because you have in and out as you can see there, an easier way to do this is to just select auto blend in out, and Blender will then just adjust the crossfade depending on how far the start and end points are of the two clips that are overlaying one another. So I think I'll just put mine there like that. Yeah, looks good. Now, I want Mario to just carry on walking after he's jumped. So I can click on this, press Shift and D, and just move the walk cycle over like that. But it's important to remember that this is not a it's not an instance of this walk cycle. It's a brand new copy. So when you have it, just come down to your action editor. You'll find it there as number 1 in this case. And you just need to make sure that your blue shield is ticked, because if it's not ticked, it could possibly get lost when you restart Blender. Now, this NLA track here is not really what I'm after. I've accidentally brought that in. I might want to put my walk cycle on the walk cycle track, which is down here. You'll find that if you try to pass this through other clips, it's not going to move. It's going to get stuck. You do have to go around like that and down and then across. That's just a technicality when it comes to NLA Editor. A lot of other edit softwares will let you just drag one clip through another clip, or they'll just let you drop one clip over the top of another clip and the other clip will cut accordingly, but the NLA doesn't work like that. So, jumps, lands, carries on walking. Very good. Let's talk about how to make this character translate across the scene. Just going to adjust the loop slightly, put that there. So, to make the character translate across the scene, the first thing we do is make a track, and I already have one, which is convenient, but I'll just delete it and start from scratch for the sake of the tutorial. So I'll go to Add Track, and then I'll name that track Translate. With Translate selected, I'll go to Add, and I'll add a track. Whoops, try again. I'll go to Add, and I'll add a strip. The strip I need isn't actually there, so I'll have to put that together first over here. I'll just press N to get rid of the N menu for now and drag that over there. So I'll select Mario and I'll press New. And then under New, I'll rename this track Translate. Translate. And I'll take the master controller here, drag it back, and place a keyframe over the top of it. And I'll go to frame 20 and move the character over there like that. So now he translates from there to there. Incredibly quickly though, so I think I'll put that at frame 100 instead. Just a quick one, if you press G and type in the number of frames that you want this to move, it will move for you. So from 20 to 100 is 80 frames, and there we go. Great, so now he's walking from there to there, jumping and stopping. Now, that's on the top layer, so that movement is taking priority at the moment. If I wanted to move it to the bottom, I'd right click, go to track order and click on to the bottom. However, you'll see, oops, well in this case you won't see, but what may have happened is there may have been animation keyframes on the master controller down here. Had there been keyframes on there, that means that walk cycle would take priority over translate because it's on top. And that just means that because there are keyframes on here, that's blocking these keyframes from having any effect at all. So it's much easier, instead of going through and trying to make sure that every clip you have doesn't have conflicting keyframes, it's much easier to just take the translate and put it at the top. So long as none of the other controllers have been keyframed accidentally, you won't have a problem. Keep on accidentally adding new tracks. Likewise with the other controllers, if on Translate you've accidentally pressed A and put a keyframe on all of these controls, Translate will now override all the other layers because it's on the top. So just make sure that you have no keyframes on any of these other controllers. You can check just by pressing A for all, holding Control and deselecting the master controller, and if you see any keyframes like this one here, just delete them, and that should then enable the clips below to take priority instead. Let's just press and do a few times to take myself back to where I was a moment ago. Excellent. So, characters walking across the scene, jumping and walking.